Originality in games is a bit of a hot topic, right? With the remake era and the industry's heavy focus on the franchises, a lot of people feel games are getting stale. Studios face razor thin margins, so, taking big risks is harder. That led to complaints that sequels are playing it safe. But sequels aren't exactly automatically bad. Some of the most important genre-defining titles were the follow-ups: Half-Life 2, Grand Theft Auto 3, and of course Mass Effect 2 are just some of the examples where a sequel didn't just repeat the original. It tightened the design and pushed the idea forward. Still, lately it does feel like the bar for what counts as a real sequel has changed. Games like Spider-Man 2 and Tears of the Kingdom were massive hits, but some people call them half-steps. God of War Ragnarok faced criticism for reused locations and animations. Phantom Liberty and the Shadow of the Earth Tree are big expansions that blur the line between DLC and the new releases. Doom's latest entry has been praised by some for not being a copy of an earlier games and accused by others of feeling like a spin-off. With sequels being the industry's lifeblood, this shift in expectations matter. And what's worth asking, why does the perception of the sequels feel different now? Are sequels actually less ambitious? Or do we just judge them, perhaps somewhat differently? Part of the problem is that newness is vague. What counts as new? Is it the new mechanics, new story, new locations, or all of the above? Different series benefit from different approaches. Some franchises like Final Fantasy or Zelda thrive on reinvention. They reinvent core systems or formats between entries. Other series like Uncharted were built on a strong, consistent core loop that didn't need to change much to stay compelling. Actually, Uncharted 2 is a fantastic example. It kept the same basic gameplay but refined everything so well it's often cited as one of the best sequels ever. Iteration can be brilliant, but the modern challenge is that iteration is easier to miss when the baseline has already become incredibly polished. Expectations have risen across the board. To earn a sequel today, a game often has to be much higher quality than what was acceptable 10 or 15 years ago. Development standards, production values, and player expectations have all both moved up. That raises costs and the development time, which pushes studios towards reuse, whether it's they're reusing the maps, animations, or even systems. Because building everything from scratch is just often not financially viable for big open worlds. When reuse is noticeable, players react negatively. We are more likely to forgive a game that feels the same than one that looks the same. Gameplay consistency is usually fine. People spend hundreds of hours in games that reuse the mechanics. But visuals or contextual repetition, like the same environments or recycled enemy models, become boring fast. To better understand this, it helps to separate two kinds of changes: mechanical and contextual. Mechanical change alters what the player does: new tools, movement, combat systems, or core rules. Contextual change alters where and why those actions happen: new locations, different enemies, altered story beats, or perhaps fresh set pieces. Both matter, but players often weight them differently. Intuitively, you think mechanical change would feel more like a real evolution. It literally changes the player's actions, but in practice, visible context usually dominates first impressions. If a sequel reuses the same map or a city, people often call it more of the same, even if the gameplay has changed a lot. Take Spider-Man 2 as an example. It introduces a bunch of mechanical additions, new abilities, a parry system, a venom sections, even a wingsuit. Those are big changes to what you will do in the game. But the game still uses much of the same city, expanded and updated, but recognizably the same space. And that fact became a talking point for people who felt that the sequel didn't move far enough from the first game. Similarly, Tears of the Kingdom introduced mechanics that massively change how players interact with the world. The fusion and the creation systems opened up gameplay in ways few mainstream titles do. Yet people complained because a lot of the map and many assets were reused from Breath of the Wild. The mechanical innovation was huge, but the recycled context made some players feel like it was just more of the same. This contrast explains why Doom: The Dark Ages got treated oddly. On the surface it looks like Doom, with a coat of a medieval paint, and that fed a narrative that it was more of a spin-off. But under the hood, Doom's combat system evolved in meaningful ways across the entries. Small enemies that look familiar behave differently because, well, the tools around them changed the entire approach to combat. These shifts are easy to miss unless you're analyzing the systems closely. Most players make a judgment quickly and visually. It looks familiar, they assume it plays familiar, and that's System 1 thinking in the action, and based on the obvious cues. System 2 thinking basically, slow and deliberate analysis. Would catch developers' mechanical shifts, but most casual impressions never get that far. Developers are stuck in a difficult spot, because the work that actually changed the core experience is often the hardest to notice. It takes careful design and iteration to improve combat flow or weapon balance. Players reward obvious, tangible differences: new locations, bigger worlds, new enemies, flashy visuals, more than just subtle mechanical refinements. So studios who pour time into improving systems can still be accused of coasting if they visibly reuse content. This isn't always cynical. Reuse is often practical and sometimes creative, but perception is what ends up shaping public conversations and sales. There's also an art to hiding reuse. Some of the studios are masters of disguising recycled assets through lighting, layout kind of changes, enemy placements, and narrative framing. From Software does this quite well. Similar assets and patterns can feel fresh when presented in new ways. When reuse is transparent or repeated without imagination, players notice and complain. When it's masked by smart design, most players never spot it. So, are sequels becoming glorified DLC? Broadly, no. They are lazy sequels, of course, yeah, but the bigger pattern is that where sequels evolve is harder to spot now, and where they stagnate is easier to see. The quality floor across games have risen, which compresses perceived change between the entries. At the same time, players make fast judgments based on the visual cues, so recycled context get called out faster than mechanical innovation gets appreciated. Now, if there's a takeaway for the developers, it's twofold. First, invest in player psychology. Understand how people form first impressions and design to either highlight meaningful mechanical changes or convincingly mask reuse. Second, be honest about where the game is trying to innovate and make that visible early. For players, it helps to slow down your judgment and look beyond the map or the textures. Many sequels do more under the surface than they seem to at first glance. At the end of the day, perception drives discussions and sales. So both sides, creators and players, could benefit from a little more patience and a little more effort to notice what actually was changed. Thank you so much for watching, like and subscribe. I'll see you guys all and have a wonderful day.